The Frost came into Toronto and did what they needed to do, which is win at least one of the games and go back to Minnesota with a split in the series. Before this game, it surprised me a little bit that Minnesota chose to play Matty Rooney. But like Coach Ken Klee talked about in the past, this team has full trust in both their goalies. And heck, they got the win this time, so... In the first period, I thought that Toronto was the better team once again. The shot totals may not have said it, but what I did notice was that they were doing a great job of shutting down Minnesota on their zone entries. They led after one period again, but it was the second period that I felt things got more exciting. Can we just talk about Lee Stecklein? She now has 5 goals in her last 4 games played. Was her returning to compete in the Worlds the spark that she needed? They were talking about in the post-game on Jocks and Jills about how she stepped away from the game multiple times, but yet it seems like she's still leveling up. Definitely not washed like I've seen a couple of fans say in the past. She had 2 goals and 1 assist in the second period alone. I think that the second goal she scored, which was on the power play, is one that Kristen Campbell is going to want back for sure. Keep in mind, the reason they had that power play was because Rylan McKinnon took a penalty for illegal body checking on Kendall Coyne-Schofield. If I remember correctly, the check looked like it made head contact. Even Coach Ken Klee was complaining why there wasn't a major penalty assessed. Coyne did briefly have to leave the game as a result of this, but luckily she was able to return for the third period, so it looks like she's alright to continue. A few minutes after Minnesota got their third of the game, Taylor Heisey took a penalty, which gave Toronto their first and only power play. Speaking of which, Heisey and Emma Malte were involved in a couple of scrums in this game, which I hope to see more of. It wasn't only them, but this game had that edge that I think you love to see. I hope this series goes the entire 5 games so this doesn't end anytime soon. Just as long as nobody gets hurt, that is. But anyway, on the ensuing power play, Savannah Harmon scored and cut the lead to 1. And then just 27 seconds later, Ali Monroe tied it. Minnesota looked like the much better team in the second, but Toronto definitely carried the momentum into the third. But then in the third, while Toronto may have outshot Minnesota 13-4 in the period, unfortunately Campbell let in a couple of bad goals. First by Toronto native Sophie Jaques, which Campbell couldn't hold on to, and as a result it snuck through. And then late in the game by Melissa Channel-Watkins, who's been one of my favorites to watch in this series so far. I know that Campbell's definitely going to want a few of those goals back. Maybe Minnesota doesn't need Britta Curl to win. They only took 1 penalty and they scored 5 goals. However, Minnesota may have gotten away with one late in the game from Claire Budorak on Sarah Nurse. As Nurse was going for the puck, it looked like Budorak elbowed her on her way in. As a result, Sarah Nurse went to the bench and she did stay there for a bit, but it looked like she did have some tears. And she eventually had to go to the dressing room with what looked like a cut on her nose. It was late in the game and she didn't return, but we certainly hope it's not something too serious because that will be a massive loss for the team. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I want both teams to be at full health. What are your thoughts on Game 2 though? Do you think that McKinnon play on Coyne or that Budorak play on Nurse is going to get looked at by the league?